What were you listening to? What radio station were you listening to before disco came into play on the radio?
Well, I guess I was listening to WABC, which was the main AM station at the time, because they would have Casey Kasem, and they would have just all the music from the early 70s that was uh, what I would call soft rock, right? It was kind of the Osmonds and Captain and Tennille and Barry White, Mandy, you know.
Yeah.
But then they would mix it with like Stairway to Heaven or something.
Yeah.
So, you were getting this kind of education into music. And it was just kind of like I was just I didn't know where I was going. I was just on this search and I was just searching for music. And I think I still search for music.
Yeah.
I still live that, really.
Do you still have the documentation of the of every Casey Kasem episode?
Oh no, I never recorded any of it, but like I could, like some of the songs I could tell you the backstories to would kill you.
Yeah.
Just like sometimes people are like, how do you know that song? Because it was number 38 on the charts in 1973 or something. And it means nothing today, but it meant a lot at the time because I was just processing all this information. So disco was just a big part of it, and disco was just kind of happening. I don't even think there was really a name for it at the time. I mean, in New York, there was a name for it. But it was like a very foreign sound to anyone coming from the suburbs, and really fascinating to me. I knew there was something forbidden about it, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was. And it really was that it was, gay and black and Puerto Rican and all that. There's this idea of the 70s as being this time of feminism and the rise of gay rights and all that stuff, but it was a very conservative time. Especially hip people were very conservative. College people, radio people, they were not hip. They really didn't like much. Everybody was in their pocket. I mean, I guess that's kind of universal. Sure. But
sure, I'm sure you you went to school with Matt Pinfield.
Yeah,
I'm sure he had a Disco Sucks T-shirt.
Yeah, well, he was a Disco Sucks person for sure.
Yeah.
In fact, I interviewed him for this book, and he still says Disco Sucks.
Oh yeah, no, I love the quotes in the book. Were phenomenal. How did your dad take you to work on the weekends, or when were?
Yeah. Right. So I would come in on the weekends, and I would just, I'd work in. My dad ran a printing shop, which was a very old school kind of thing. It wasn't like a new hip printing like we know it today. It was like old printing presses and all that. And I learned how to operate those presses. And that's very much why I think I got into publishing, because I knew how to run a printing press. Right. So, but I would, the guys there were two guys who worked for my dad, and they would turn on the radio, and like this music was just so interesting to me because they listened to a lot of salsa was really the sound of New York, of that area, and but disco kind of connected to that. It was kind of like a more a less Latin version of it. So I was paying attention to Tito Puente and a lot of these kind of guys, but it didn't really resonate with me like disco did. I was just kind of just the idea that music was there to dance and to look good, right, and to be stylish. What I learned in a lot of this research on the book is obviously common knowledge, but I had kind of, since I'm not really from the 60s, I don't really have the, I don't really come from that. So, but in the 60s, it was very much, music had gotten very ugly. It was druggy and people wearing buckskin jackets and, and blue jeans. And, it was just, that was rock and roll. And that was kind of like what that scene was. And it wasn't really music. I always talk about music being from the head, the heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was music very much from the head. Everyone was kind of feeding their head, if you want to use the Jefferson Airplane line. So and suddenly there's this sound where it's tied into a fashion, really bad fashion, like nothing I would really wear, but the polyester suits and that kind of stuff. But
Would you say disco was below the belt, so to speak?
yeah, absolutely, you're right. So it's the head, the heart, and the groin, right?
Yeah.
That's where your music comes from. So this was more heart and groin.